Shiloh and Jerusalem have been historical places of worship for the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. It's also been the epicenter of tension within the nation of Israel as well, between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Today, we're going to explore how this historical tension between Shiloh and Jerusalem, the northern and the southern kingdom, may give us some clues and insights into the tension that exists today between the Hebrew Israelites and the Jewish people. As I present this talk today, I want to give this one caveat. I am not a Hebrew Israelite. I'm actually a Messianic Jewish believer who supports the state of Israel, but also cannot deny the reality that my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters who hail from Israel by way of their Igbo identity should at least be given some form of consideration, and perhaps would be had it not been for colonization and racism. Shiloh. After the Israelites entered Canaan, the tabernacle was first set up in Shiloh, in Ephraim's territory, which is generally regarded as northern Israel. This is what we see in Joshua 18, verse 1. This made Shiloh the first central place where God's name dwelt. But because of corruption and idolatry, God eventually forsook Shiloh. And we see this in Jeremiah 7, 12 through 15. Jerusalem, later under Solomon, became the epicenter of Israelite worship. Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, in Judah, which was a part of the southern kingdom. And God confirmed his name that it would rest forever upon this temple. And we see this in 1 Kings 9, verses 1 through 3. The shift from Shiloh, which is in Ephraim's territory in the northern kingdom, to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, the southern kingdom, created a theological and a political divide. After the kingdom split, the northern kingdom from the southern kingdom, Jeroboam, the first king of the northern kingdom, rejected Jerusalem to prevent his people from returning to Judah. He established worship centers at Bethel and Dan, and later Samaritans elevated Mount Gerizim as their holy site instead of Jerusalem. 2 Kings 17. By the time of Yeshua, the Samaritans still worshipped on Mount Gerizim, claiming this site to be the true place of worship and claiming that they, the Samaritans, were the true Israel, while the Jews insisted that Jerusalem was the only legitimate temple site. And we see a glimpse of this in the book of John, chapter 4, verses 20 through 22. So what we see then, the Samaritans, who represented remnants of the northern kingdom, they were a mix of the Jews and the Syrian colonists, while the Jews themselves descended mainly from the southern kingdom of Judah. This dispute over the true place of worship came to symbolize a larger ethnic and theological rivalry. The Jews often saw the Samaritans as half-breeds and heretics. The Samaritans in turn believed that the Jews were corrupt impostors. This tension continues, and we see it even during the time of Yeshua in John 4, where the Samaritan woman questions Yeshua about Mount Gerizim versus Jerusalem as the true place of worship. So how does this relate to the Hebrew Israelites and the Jews? And what is the Igbo connection? The Jewish-Samaritan rivalry alludes to the modern tension between Jews and Hebrew Israelites. Many Hebrew Israelites claim descent from Israel, perhaps the northern kingdom Ephraim, because many Hebrew Israelites are descendant of slaves that came to the Americas through the Middle Passage. Many of them have been interbred and are descendants of those who were taken from the Bight of Biafra. We have history books and other proof that the Igbos that were taken as slaves from the Bight of Biafra during the transatlantic slave trade are in fact Igbos, lineal descendants of Israel. We still have those Igbos living among us today here in the United States, across the world, and still in Nigeria, many of whom still hold to their biblical Israelite traditions. So the Hebrew Israelites who in part, and I say in part because their claims are varied in terms of how they connect to Israel. But this speaker has confirmed that the Igbos, who are lineal descendants of Israel, are in fact verified source that connects the Hebrew Israelites to Israel. So we see now the Hebrew Israelite connection to Israel, and they argue that they are the true descendants of Israel. And the Jews today, who descend mostly from Judah, which is the southern kingdom, are perceived by the world as the true nation of Israel, to the utter disregard of everyone else. So the Jews generally view the Hebrew Israelites as making a mockery of Jewish identity, while the Hebrew Israelite sees Jews as impostors who usurp their role. Historically, this mirrors the same intra-Israelite conflict of antiquity. The northern tribes, the Ephraimites and the Samaritans, versus Judah, Jerusalem, and the Jews. These competing claims about who truly represents Israel. What are the historical implications of this inner fighting? Division weakens the people. Just as the division of Israel and Judah made them vulnerable to the Assyrian and the Babylonian conquest, modern infighting between Jews and Hebrew Israelites weakens unity. Israel is at a crossroad where it is fighting for its existential existence. There are many nations in the West who historically supported Israel. They are now abandoning Israel. We see nations like Canada, European nations like the UK, and other European nations and France who are coming out against Israel and saying we're no longer supporting you. Many go so far as to claim that Israel is a genocidal state. In fact, when you look at the globe, the only nation that truly stands behind Israel today and support it is the United States of America under the present administration. Even Australia has come out and spoken strongly against the nation of Israel. With so many people coming against Israel, can Israel really afford this infighting? Can Israel really afford to deny and denounce its brethren? Whether or not Israel wants to accept the identity of the Hebrew Israelites, what Israel cannot deny is the Igbo connection to the nation of Israel. Igbos have historically been proven for the last 3,000 years that they are in fact lineal descendants of Israel, who have been able to prove it through culture and tradition, as well as other historical documents which evidence their departure from the land of Israel and as people connected still to the land of Israel. Israel cannot deny that fact. Whether or not they choose to embrace their brother is a different story. And with the Igbos themselves being acknowledged by other Sephardic groups as true Israelites, Obadiah Lyons, for instance, has come out with a Bet Din and a legal decision stating that the Igbos are in fact Jewish and lineal descendants of Israel. When we have claims such as these and the writings, historical writings of Olude Equiano, who shows his biblical traditions tied to that of the traditional practices seen in the Bible, which have been corroborated by the British Missionary Society of Antiquity, all these evidence compiled gives a strong evidence to the claims that the Igbos are in fact lineal descendants of Israel. Now we know that slavery and the transatlantic slave trade is in fact responsible for who we see and identify today as the modern day Hebrew Israelites. These are African Americans and Afro-Caribbeans who are in fact the progeny of the slaves of the past. And if the slaves of the past came as Igbos, then their children are certainly Igbos. So whether or not Israel wants to acknowledge the Hebrew Israelites, whether or not Israel wants to embrace the Igbos as their brother, that reality still exists. And Israel is going to somehow come to the realization, when all the world rejects it, that the only people that remains are your brothers, your darker brothers, who you refuse to embrace. So the Jews and the Hebrew Israelites are in fact a part of the larger Israelite tradition. The Hebrew Israelites can be shown to descend from the Igbos, who are also overlooked by the Jews and the state of Israel. These historical wounds, displacement, colonization, and exile has caused enduring disputes over authenticity. Sacred geography, sacred identity, Mount Gerizim and Jerusalem shows how place and worship become central markers of who truly belongs to God's covenant people. This continues in debates between the Jews and the Hebrew Israelites today. The original tension between Shiloh, the northern kingdom and Ephraim, and Jerusalem, the southern kingdom and Judah, sets the stage for later disputes between the Samaritans and Jews over the true worship site. This historical rivalry is echoed in today's debates between the Jews and the Hebrew Israelites, where each group questions the legitimacy of the other. Both, however, are branches of the same Israelite story, locked in a cycle of division that has roots going back to over 2,500 years. Shalom.